Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to the EastSide Community Radio. My name is Stephanie Garcia, a community organizer and jaranera from El Sereno, Los Angeles, that will be hosting today's episode. Today we have 3 segments addressing gentrification, immigration, and the importance of community spaces. Here's the first segment, Gentrification in the Eyes of People Resisting, with NELA and STAY, facilitated by Kimberly Soriano.
This segment's about gentrification. We have both representatives from STAY and NELA. Can both of y'all introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Arturo. I am a member of the Northeast LA Alliance. We're a group dedicated to challenging notions of gentrification and fighting displacement in Northeast LA.
Hello there, my name is Rio and I resist displacement with STAY. STAY stands for Standing Together Advocating for Youth, and we were built in resistance to the gang injunction that was literally unfolded the same day that the Echo Park Lake renovations day was opened up.
What is gentrification to you, and what influenced this definition that you have?
Well, I think gentrification as a term is constantly contested itself, and there are multiple angles on what gentrification is. One side of the debate, people talking about gentrification as a continuation of this tradition of so-called community redevelopment or improvement or investment. And under that guise, I think gentrification to a lot of people, politicians or people of a wealthier class, means that undesirable neighborhoods and the people that come with them, in their eyes, are renovated or improved. On another side, I think from a community's point of view, gentrification is the displacement of cultures and communities. So the uprooting of families from their places of life and their sources of livelihood, from their roots, from their community, and from their survival networks. So for me, in my life experience, what I've seen is that gentrification really does mean displacement, but it also means displacement of a culture. And that goes along with the longer historical tradition in the U.S. of throttling or ending or destroying cultures or attempting to destroy cultures.
I actually agree with a lot of what Arturo has said, and I share very similar feelings about gentrification. I do believe that gentrification is the way that developers are using as the positive spin of what's happening in our communities. And it's really disgusting to hear real estate say, hey, the neighborhood, it's a good thing that you buy property here because it's getting gentrified here, right? And so these are the disgusting things that colonialists use, right, to say I'm doing something really positive, like settlers, right? Settlers was another word of that. A white flight was another word of that. Manifest destiny. These are all variations of the exact same thing that's been happening since colonization, at least from the European route coming into this area, right? And to me, it's totally neocolonialism, and it's absolutely another device to continuously fracture our communities, because if we are able to actually stay rooted somewhere, build culture, build community, you build network, you build resources, you build a community that can actually help and support you, right? And I think a really good example of that for me is in Echo Park. I was born and raised in Echo Park, and absolutely, I would be kidding myself if I didn't say I was scared growing up walking down the street. There was violence, there was gangs, there was all sorts of things that were not right. But I do understand that the context is if you put in a bunch of immigrants who've come from war-torn countries and you stick them all in the same place and they don't know each other, there's a lot of distrust. I mean, this is really compounded by PTSD, trauma, etc., right? And so after 30 years, of this community being settled, grounded, you start building trust, you start building networks, you know where to go, you know who to get your this from, you build your own economy, and that makes you sustainable. And your kids may be more likely to do things that may, gain them privilege access, right? And so that's one of the most troubling things about gentrification, is that people conflate gentrification with the cleanup of our communities, when it's not. When gentrifiers have entered our communities, when we finally trusted each other, we built our networks with each other, and then they come and then they fragmentize, they fracture our communities, and it, to me, is completely intentional. I mean, to me, that is a racist device to continuously mess with people of color communities, right? And so those are the things that I think about, that it's just like this nice thing that white people use for their feeling better, I guess. but it's absolutely disgusting. It's displacement and it's violent.
I guess going on with the topic of violence in the communities, how have you seen violence, whether emotional, physical, increase because of gentrification, displacement, gang injunctions that have followed gentrification within the community?
Yeah, no, that's a great follow-up question because, again, I just stated that gentrification is often conflated with making our community safer, and it's not true. It makes it safer for certain people. And so, when we think about the gang injunction being in place, and that's the reason why Stay got activated, was that now the violence is increased on youth, right? I was substitute teaching at one of the schools in Echo Park, and there was some English prompt that I had them do about some troubled thing they had, like a troubled day, a hard day. And one of the kids was struggling. And I said, well, what's the hardest thing? He's like, well, honestly, the hardest thing was being pulled off my skateboard while skateboarding from the park to my house by a cop and being thrown against the wall. And I said, why? He said, well, because he said that he thought maybe I was stealing. And I was like, did he have any evidence? He's like, well, no. But then he just looked at me and laughed and said, you can go now, right? And this is really violent, right? And this is really disgusting. And this didn't happen 10 years ago. It happened like months ago, right? And so that kind of violence is increasing on our youth. Oh, and mind you, this young person was about 11 years old. Like, this is a really young person. And this is just really troubling that youth have to deal with that. Another mom complained about the same thing about her son. Like, and this story is just repeatedly for a lot of the youth of color there, indicative of all the violence. And this is actual violence, right? But this is not even talking about the psychological damage, right? Of seeing like a poor brown youth living next to a really wealthy family who you're like, how the hell does that person live in a whole house to themselves? And there's like 13 of us in a 1-bedroom, right? Like that's a social toxin. So now we're like socially intoxicating our youth, and a lot of our youth are like, man, their families have it together and we don't. And that just really demoralizes your own hope, right? And so those are some of the violences that, amidst many more that I can name.
Another thing that I've noticed is that in heavily gentrified areas, there's acceptable forms of, say, public drunkenness, where for many years, or in certain neighborhoods with heavily Latino, predominantly black neighborhoods, forms of public drunkenness are seen as vice. They're viewed through this moralistic lens, and they're seen as sinful and things that are meant to be stopped by authority. However, in gentrified areas where you have like bar walking and art walking and stuff like that, those forms of public drunkenness are acceptable. Or you might have somebody walking down the street smoking a substance, and that's seen as a criminal activity. However, if there's a vape shop that opens and it becomes somehow sanctioned, and if a certain class of people is doing it, then it also becomes an acceptable behavior. But in gentrification, that gets thrown, those two forms of the same process, those two forms, let's say, of public drunkenness, are thrown right up against each other and into high relief. And so I think that's something that causes some damage. So you say that it's acceptable for a certain person to walk down the street drunk, and actually they're celebrated because they might be supporting, quote unquote, the economy. But another person doing the same exact thing might be seen as a criminal.
So you definitely included a great transition into talking about race and class, right? And when we talk about class, we can't really separate class from race. Most of the people that we see gentrifying are white people. However, there is Latinos, there is black folks, there is Asian American folks who are gentrifying as well, right? And a common, I guess, theme that I've heard as the answer to gentrification has been gentrification. So can both of y'all speak on your opinions on that? And is that really a, reliable solution to gentrification?
It would be amazing if folks of color, and I don't like the word gentrification. I don't even know. I've thought about it a lot, and I don't even know how to grapple with it. But what I do think about is, like, it would be amazing, being solution oriented here, that if folks of color wanted to really invest in the community, they would have to really invest in the community. And that would include asking the community, hey, what things do you need? Just like Arturo was speaking, it's like a bar. Usually what I've learned from sitting in the neighborhood council in Echo Park, and I'm not representing their views right now, but what I've learned in that is that people, comunidad, la gente there, they don't like bars. That's associated with something really negative, right? And so I think that if, genuine communities, or a person of color who wants to really invest in the community, that has to ask the community. But I also think they have to be staunchly against making it an inviting place for white folks to come. Because I believe that often what happens is a lot of people of color actually doing good projects for our own community end up, maybe not intentionally, but end up inviting white folks to feel comfortable to come into the area. And that's more problematic to me, is actually white people. And it's because we're in a racist institution. It's not because of white people, but it's because white supremacy is real. We are living in a white supremacist world. And like the reality is, at the end of the day, white bodies in our hoods and them displacing, those bodies are value. That's what brings the value. It's not gonna be the brown person, because the brown person still looks brown when they walk out of their house. It's not like people walk around with their income listed on their face, so you can't really tell, right? So like aesthetically, with the demented mind of people and developers, it's like a white body increases the value of a neighborhood, right? And so I also really forewarn, many other, folks of color who do want to open up community space or projects to be really careful and intentional about who is being brought to the space. And if a white person needs to be brought, damn, they better be down. Damn, they better ride or whoa, like you cannot just bring white people, like you can't. And I've seen that happen in Oakland, where it's like a community of color bike shop ends up inviting a lot of white folks, and then they end up feeling way more comfortable to move into that neighborhood. And I've seen it in many other places, and a lot of us have talked about it, that happens. And it's really actually scary the way we can lead paths to our own displacement, right? Like this is historical too, right? There's a lot of, things in history we can talk about on how that's happened as well.
Moving on to resistance, because both Echo Park and Highland Park have displayed a lot of creative and different ways on how gentrification has impacted them and different resistant methods. Can you talk about, I guess, your favorite action or method of resistance?
I can't really talk about a favorite, but I think that creativity and art have a place in resistance. And that's what I can speak to. I think Northeast Alliance does a lot of things, and one of the things that members of NELA do is nuts and bolts traditional activism and nuts and bolts canvassing of neighborhoods, or setting up tenants' rights workshops, or connecting people who are under threat of displacement or eviction with attorneys or legal services. So those are all things that we do, but I think that one of the things that I think has been effective is using the arts as a form of resistance, or even as a form of creative self-reflection. And I think that when I think of that question, what I'm thinking of is that there's the external, there's the projection that you saw, and there's the ability to gain media attention and to get people talking about this issue. But then there's the internal liberation that comes from working collectively as artists, kind of getting together and envisioning something beautiful. And so art to me works both ways. It kind of works externally to people who are not involved in the practice of art, but it also is something beautiful to do with your community. And I think it has kind of an integral place in resisting gentrification, resisting displacement.
I definitely agree with Arturo in the art and creativity aspect of the resistance. And I think one of the things that I actually want to talk about, because I don't think I talk about it enough, and I think it's really important. I think the best action was to actually engage people who are born and raised in Echo Park and the surrounding areas to be up in arms and resist. To me, right there, that to me is really the potent part, because I think that often, or maybe not often, but I think that it's really actually hard to organize like from the ground up. Like it often, I've seen it take place where folks are coming from outside trying to help, right? And outsiders trying to speak on our behalf. And I remember distinctly at one of our meetings at Stay, we decided to try something different. We said, you know what? Why don't we just say, because there was a bunch of community members who came from everywhere, from all this across the city, which was amazing and fantastic. But we decided to actually built two circles, and one of them was of born and raised long-term residents, and the other one was of allies, right? And I think that moment, I remember that moment very distinctly because it was very uncomfortable, as you could imagine. People who were allies felt very uncomfortable about that, and because some of them were folks of color. But we were saying, hey, this is an Echo Park thing. We just want to focus on what Echo Park people want. And I remember the homies, the homeboys who were like way in the back. When we said, hey, this is for people who are born and raised, they stepped up fully into the circle, and then they started to speak, right? To me, that was one of the most powerful acts of resistance we could do when we really, really highlight our voices as being people who are affected and geographically tied to that land, right? And so those are the things that I think is amazing. And I know that NELA has a lot of similar people who actually reflect and are born and raised and like truly committed to the community. Not like hypothetically I just moved in here, but like I'm fully committed, and I am down for the folks who want to join who just moved there too, because hell, they moved in there already. So, at this point it's like anybody we can get on our team is what we need, because this is some real stuff. Like this is violence we're fighting.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your amazing input and ideas. Can you provide contact information for people who are interested in these efforts and want to be in solidarity with both of y'all?
You can find us by searching on Facebook for Northeast Los Angeles Alliance, and we'll pop up. You can get information from us, our periodic updates, news items. We have a great photographer who works with us, John Urquiza, who's always posting really great, inspiring photos of people resisting displacement and also of the realities of displacement as it looks in Northeast LA, and also find community resources there. So that would be the best way to contact us.
So the best way to contact us is definitely through the Facebook page as well. Ours would be Standing Together Advocating for Our Youth. So it would literally be that, Standing Together Advocating for Our Youth. And then you could also email us at togetherwestayfree@gmail.com. So those are good ways to contact us.
Thank you so much. It definitely means a lot to have representation both from Northeast Los Angeles and Echo Park. Thank you for your wisdom and your organizing efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight. Really appreciate the time and space.
Next, we have an update on the immigration political climate of DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, as well as DAPA, Deferred Action for Parental Accountability, by Pablo Alvarado and interviewed by Roberto Flores.
Okay, so we're here. My name is Roberto Flores, and I'm here at the Pasadena Labor Center, and I'm interviewing Pablo Alvarado, who is the current director of the National Day Labor Organizing Network, NDLON. One of the ideas was to have segments of immigration information, and this will be our first installment. So, Pablo, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening. We want to talk about I think it was November 9th, Monday the 9th or Tuesday the 10th, when a judge ruled that Obama had overstepped his authority, and he basically upheld a previous ruling by Texas, and this is the Fifth Circuit. I wanted to get from you both the significance of this ruling as well as the meaning for the undocumented that were being impacted favorably by the DAPA and the extended DACA. Maybe you could give us a little bit background as to both of those programs.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me paint the broader picture. So what's happening is that there are over 11 million undocumented people who are working very hard, toiling in the fields, in the construction sites, restaurants, hotels, taking care of babies, painting houses, keeping gardens green. And people are, although they're contributing so much, they're being denied access to equality and justice. Both political parties are complicit in denying equality and justice to the undocumented community. In one hand, we have the right wing, the Republican Party, which is being controlled by a small segment of xenophobes, nativist politicians who have determined what the immigration policy for the entire party will be. So the entire party has been taken hostage by politicians like Jeff Sessions, like Chris Kobach, Steve King, and now Donald Trump. Arpaio, John Brewer, Russell Pierce, politicians of that nature. And they are deciding for the Republican Party what their immigration policy is going to be. And it can be summarized in one statement that Romney made, and that is the policies of self-deportation. They want to make life so miserable so that people leave, pack their own bags, and leave on their own. That's the Republican Party, the right wing. In the other end, we have a president, a Democratic Party, a segment of the Democratic Party that is interested more in the issue than in finding a solution to the issue. They want to use immigration as a wedge issue so that the Republicans can continue spilling the kind of grotesque statements that they make, racist, bigot statements that they make every time that they talk about immigration. So it is in their best interest to keep the issue alive so that they can guarantee the Latino vote for generations to come. So we're in the middle of all of that debate. And what's happening is that the rhetoric of the Democratic Party is really good. They're saying we're a nation of immigrants and we want to make sure that the people are integrated into society. But at the same time, we have a president that has deported more people than any other president in the history of the country. It's over 2.5 million at this point. So there we are, in the middle. So we pressure the president so that he can exercise his executive authority. And last November, he said, I am going to do it. November of last year, I'm going to do it, and this is what I'm going to do. So the segment of xenophobes comes and starts blocking in the courts his executive authority. Now, they go to one of the most conservative judicial districts that there is in this country, that Fifth Circuit, in Texas, where you actually have vigilante judges, anti-immigrant judges, who are ruling on an immigrant rights issue. They blocked it, and he decided to appeal in the same to appeal the decision in the district. They won, and then he decided to appeal again in the same district. This decision. So now the decision that took place last week, to me, it was something that expected, because there was no way that in the same district, a very conservative district, we would have gotten a different kind of ruling. So we knew that it was the decision of the previous judges would be in one way or another upheld. And that's exactly what happened.
So some of these, the people that are listening to this radio are teachers or social workers or relatives or friends of people that are impacted directly by DACA and DAPA. What does this ruling mean for them? Is it for the original DACA and for the new DACA and DAPA applicants?
It really means nothing because we're going to continue with the same status quo, the same situation that we've had. It's problematic for DACA because now that this executive decision has been challenged, then that means that the decision that the president made in 2008 to grant DACA to the youth could also be challenged. So it jeopardizes that previous decision. So, but obviously, the court battle is going to go on and on. So now, the problem that we have, Roberto, is that 26 states have filed this lawsuit against Obama to stop the implementation of DAPA and DACA. The president is actually, representing, in the context of this lawsuit, it's representing the 11 undocumented million people. And the problem is that the legal defense that we've had by the administration has been very weak. First of all, he shouldn't have gone to the Fifth Circuit to appeal the decision. Why didn't he go to the Supreme Court directly? It would be in a very different moment if he had implemented a much stronger defense for our community. So you can expect the deported in chief, the person who's deported more people in the history of this country, to represent the undocumented people against the xenophobes, against the racists. It doesn't make sense. So it was expected that the defense will be weak.
For people's further information and ongoing decisions and changes, where should they go? What websites would you recommend?
Well, they can visit the website of our organization, www.ndlon.org.
Okay. And as I came in, and this is more about NDLON, and so it's a little change in topic, and it's about the labor center here in Pasadena. As I came in, there were people busy in one room, and then there's a class going on in the other. What happens here? I see that there's some parents from Madison School, and I know that NDLON is about the entire life of immigrant and day laborers, and it involves itself not only in the immigration, ICE aspect, but also in their education and so on. What's going on with this, the Madison School folks?
As you said, for us, every day in this job center, we have between 50 to 60 men and women who come to look for work. We don't see them just as workers. I mean, they're parents, they're grandparents. They get sick. They go to school, they go to church. We see the people who come here in all of the dimensions of their lives. They have kids in schools. The exclusion of people doesn't happen only in the workplace or in the face of immigration challenges with the police. The exclusion of people happens in all dimensions of life as well. The exclusion of people happens at the schools when their children are not being treated fairly, when they are not allowed to participate in the decision-making processes that have to do with the education of their kids, with the future of their families. So the school district of Pasadena, the superintendent imposed a principal at the Madison Elementary School without receiving the input of parents and teachers. And as a result, over half of the teachers have left the school. Now the school is being run by substitute teachers. I think that the school year has been lost. The principal has threatened to call immigration authorities if parents protest. The principal has escorted teachers with police. Every time that there is an incident, he calls the police. Our community faces many issues, and the solution that he has for every single problem that he has around the school and inside the school is calling the police. So it doesn't make sense at all for us. So there's been a series of incidents of abuse against the parents and the teachers, and the Senate provides a space for them to meet and fight back, because this is a place where oppressed communities come together to exercise their power.
If somebody wanted to help the Madison parents in this effort for a better education and a more democratic education, where could they go? What could they do?
Well, they can call the Parents Committee here in Pasadena. They are building their own website. It's a new group, and they are, for example, on Thursday they're gonna go to speak at the school board. They're gonna be protesting in front of the school as well. They're gonna be organizing other parents, who have been apparently, whose rights have been abused by this person. And by the district. So their struggle is going to continue. There are lawyers already trying to see if there are legal grounds for a class action lawsuit, because, at the same time the school district ignored and didn't allow the parents to participate in the selection of the school principal, he allowed 4 other schools to have a selection panel. And it happens that Madison is the school with the largest number of Latinos. It's 98% Latino, and a lot of them from immigrant backgrounds. So he chose to ignore, he chose to impose this person on this community, saying that what our community needs is rules, more regulations, need to be more strict, saying that there is no order. Sounds like really terrible.
Sounds like Homeland Security all over again at the micro level.
Well, that school is resembling more one of those correctional facilities than an elementary school, and we believe that we deserve more than that. I live right across Madison, and I have decided to send my kid to another school. The school where my kid goes, has a physical education teacher, a librarian. They have a community garden where my kid learns where the plants come from. If there was half of those things at that school, I would be sending my kid right there, and it's right across the street. This school has been neglected for decades, and now all of a sudden they want to send, a dictator to come and fix it and mistreat people, abuse people's rights with the idea that this person is going to improve the grades. It doesn't make sense.
Do you have the phone number for the Madison parents at your handy?
Yes, you can call 626-319-5144.
Okay, thank you on that. One more question, Pablo. Well, a couple more questions. One, a very quick one, is the fight for $15 an hour. I know that from this center, a lot has been organized to support that struggle. Can you just say a little bit on that?
Sure. Well, the day labor center, the workers here at this center are already charging 15. Any employer that comes, they don't go out for less than $15. So they're leading the city by example. And most employers are actually paying 15.
Beautiful.
10, 1 out of 10 will actually leave the center without hiring a worker, but 9 will actually hire the workers, and the workers have decided to essentially, accept that reality. So they are charging 15, demonstrating that it's possible.
Right.
So we're in the middle of this fight in the city to make sure that the minimum wage increases to 15 within the next years, not immediately. So. We understand that the center is playing a fundamental role, because it happens that this is perhaps one of the few worker-led infrastructures in Pasadena, one of the few grassroots worker-led organizations. So they are leading the fight for 15 here in the city. So they're doing marches, they're doing their sharing their testimonies in front of the city, the people who are making the decisions. They are challenging employers that have failed to pay their wages, because it's both. It's the increase of minimum wage, and it's also protections to prevent wage theft in our city.
Wage theft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are 20, for example, right now there are 20 workers whose wages have been stolen by unscrupulous employers, and we're trying to see how we're going to recover those wages. And what happens is that oftentimes we go to the Labor Commission, or we go to a small claims court, and we win, and all we have is a piece of paper with a ruling in our favor, but there's no way to enforce that ruling, that decision. So we're going to try to see if the city can establish some mechanisms to enforce those rulings, and to make sure that no worker is owed wages in our city.
Now, off the top of your head, do you remember the statistic of how much money is stolen per year? I know it's millions and millions of dollars.
It's millions. I don't have the statistic with me right now, but
okay.
It's millions and millions of dollars. Because it's not just the blatant, cruel stealing of wages directly, like I'm not going to pay you because you don't deserve it, because you might be undocumented or whatever. It's also the fact that workers don't get paid overtime, that they don't get breaks, that they don't get holidays, that they don't get vacation. All of that encompasses wage theft. So when you add all of that up, I bet you in the city of Pasadena, it's millions of dollars.
Okay, now would you have a phone number or a website? I think there's a website, Fight for 15, I think, where people can go and join the fight for $15 minimum.
Correct. There's 2 websites, the Fight for 15 and Raise the Wage websites. You can also call, if you want to engage here in Pasadena, at 626-365-8193 and talk to Angel Olvera, and he is in charge of the campaign here in Pasadena.
One more question, and this for you, Pablo. What happened in France, what can you tell our audience in terms of the increase in xenophobia and jingoism that is going on? Once again, I know there's a quote in your press release concerning immigrants always being scapegoated. This is another opportunity for them to be used as pawns, political pawns, in the election, like a la Trump. So what can you tell people? How could they fight, back and in a way where with their friends and family, let them know that that type of thinking is wrong?
Well, education is very important. People must understand that the issue of migration is not just an issue of the United States. It's a global phenomena. And the more violence, whether it's political or common violence and extreme poverty prevailed in impoverished countries, the more the migration cycles will continue. And in this case, in Europe, for instance, is the invasion, the wars in Libya, in Syria, and Yemen, in all those places that are in turmoil. And those are the people that are actually leaving. And unfortunately, the reception that they get in many countries is not the best reception, particularly in Western countries, knowing full well that they themselves have caused that situation. So the solution, if first world countries want to fix this situation, is first of all they have to stop supporting repressing governments. The United States, for example, facilitated a coup d'etat in Honduras. They have to stop doing that. Number two, they want to promote more, economic treaties that lead to equality, that make the impoverished countries, benefit from it, and not just go and extract the natural resources and the wealth. They can go and promote the redistribution of wealth, in those places. Have a more fair foreign policies. They can do a lot of things in those countries to make sure that people don't go to other places. Believe me, if I had the opportunities that I have had here, I would have stayed in El Salvador, and with my loved ones. So these are some of the things that I think people need to start thinking beyond their backyards, beyond their municipalities. The most beautiful thing about immigrants is that, in my case, for example, as an immigrant, I love the place where I live very much, Pasadena. But I also love the place that I left behind. And I think we're going to be able to change the world when we care about those that we don't see, when we care about places that we might not know, when we care about people that we will never know in our lifetime.
Well, this is Roberto Flores signing off. I've been speaking and having a discussion, very interesting discussion, with Pablo Alvarado, Director of NDLON, National Day Labor Organizing Network. I'll let you go with this for thought. Benito Juárez once said, el derecho entre naciones y individuos, el derecho ajeno es la paz. Among nations and individuals, the respect for rights, for respect for ownerships, respect for property is the peace. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Lastly, we will end our evening with the voices of community members sharing their intimate thoughts on how they experience their community conditions through poetry in Alivio's Open Mic Night, a community space in South Los Angeles, facilitated by Brenda Lafoya.
In the southeast of Los Angeles County thrives a small city of Bell, where a large community of working class and undocumented live. Somehow an explosion of culture emanates from a garage. You can see artwork hanging from its walls. There are vendors in the driveway setting up their merchandise, an array of self-crafted jewelry, candles, cards, and t-shirts. There are children running around the front lawn, cumbia music, warming up the incoming crowd. The front garage door is wide open and inviting. The sign that reads, Alivio, hangs over a stage made from wooden pallets that were gathered from the local goodfellas. The smell of tacos fills the air, and the crowd continues to come in. Alivio, which translates the word relief in Spanish, is an open mic held one Friday of the month. It is a safe place where people gather every month to get away from a main prejudice culture that can be filled with stereotypes, sexism, racism, Islamophobia. It has been 2 years since Eric Oteras has converted his parents' garage into a cultural sensation. Every month, poetry, storytelling, music, laughter, clapping, chanting can be heard from the garage.
All right, I'm going to share a poem called Somos Poesía. What matters more is not what you do, but why you do it. My poetry is for my gente, not the prestigious academics promoting Eurocentric standards of what poetry really is. Not only Shakespeare, not only Whitman, not only Poe. It is some Rodriguez, some Cisneros, some Wahi, some Jericho. This is not for the elites or the pretentious. It's for the man selling raspados to kids in the summer, for the señora who hustles quinceañera recuerdos, for the señor whispering micas, micas in your oreja at the swap meet de Alameda. I write for the family straight from Oaxaca, eating from the venta of juguetes and pulseras on the corner by the boardwalk. I write for the fists raised to the sky, an army fighting for education, a village raising spears at incarceration. I write anti-war, I live anti-racism, I strive anti-sexism, I breathe against the prison industrial complex, I scream pro-immigration, I chant ethnic studies, I sing pro-indigenous, I support puro reproductive justice. I love the transnational struggle, the lucha que se escucha en el respiro de nuestro corazón. I love the people united of the world, and I write to erode the mold I was carved out to be in high school and university, because my poetry, according to what a teacher once said, is too ethnic, too bilingual, too neurotic with its Spanglish, too straightforward in the face, not a mystery, not a puzzle or a maze. Forget hyper complex analogies. I want my neighbors, my vecinos to read my heart, my soul, my tongue, my energy without the need for freaking dictionaries. My poetry doesn't need a doubter's recognition or approval. I write to show los estudiantes that you need not be white or rich to write poetry. Thank you.
Qué bueno, pues this is happening. With us today, I'm not just performing, but this lovely mujercita right here will be sharing some work with you all. She is my lovely, Shawn Mendes' lovely sister. She's a student at Nimitz Middle School. Yeah. And not too long ago, she wrote a really, really cool poem for Dia de los Muertos. Her teacher had her write a poem in a really cool style, and for this poem, she decided to write it in honor of our grandpa, Papa Beto. So, take it away.
This is called Mi Papa Beto. 5 years have passed since your death. The thought of having your full presence seems so unreal. Yet the disease that buried you is still alive. If only diabetes could be cured with a sweet magical pill. Oh, Papa Beto, your absence feels like a kitchen without food. I miss you and your humor. I remember sitting outside your front door steps, watching people pass, and listening to your stories about locals. Although La Barca is a small town, your stories make it seem so big. Till this day, whenever we visit your grave, I have flashbacks to your stories. Thanks to your presence, our family keeps on growing. As I keep on writing my own story, I save each chapter for you. And so whenever I step out of this world, I hope to see you there at the land of the remembered. Thank you.
If you're interviewing them, step right here next to the camera so they can go really good.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me over.
Definitely.
I think just experienced a little bit of Alivio, but I want you to tell our audience what is Alivio all about. ¿Qué significa? What does Alivio mean?
Alivio, first of all, means relief. Alivio means relief from our working class routine. We live in a working class community here in Southeast Los Angeles, where the majority of the population are Latinos, are first generation, or immigrants, and there's just not a lot of time for cultura and art and like listening to neighbors and their talents and their stories. So Alivio means relief from the daily grind, the daily routine, where people can come and experience community, get that sense of community and that sense of belonging, that sense of beauty, art, and talent that we're trying to nurse here in this space. So basically it's giving back to our community as well, because we don't have a lot of spaces here. I literally had to make my garage into a once a month community cultural center for la gente. Yeah.
And Alivio has been going on strong for 2 years now, right? Your 2-year anniversary is coming up?
Yeah, in January 2016, it's going to be officially 2 years. And first it started as, I want to do this because I think it's important, and we have a lack of space. Like, it's like sounds bad saying this, but it's been a cultural desert because we don't have spaces here in Southeast LA that harvest that community and by the people, for the people power. We don't have spaces like that. So we needed that. And once Alivio came along, people with like minds connected, people that have the same passions connected, and collectives have been born, new events have been created. So it sort of has started like this like slow like snowball effect of people getting to know each other here and linking up and doing other things. Yeah.
During the performances, someone mentioned, I don't know if it was you,
yeah,
about
success. Like
yes,
leaving.
About leaving.
Yes,
success meant leaving the barrio, leaving the hood. That was something that we all just imagined.
Yeah.
But when did you came to the realization that it actually meant empowering and sharing your knowledge at home, in your backyard?
That was like a slow like transformation in my mind that happened like probably like 2.5 years ago. I noticed myself when I started going to like cool events like open mics, galleries, community organization events, like grassroots movements. I noticed myself always leaving like Southeast LA and Bell, getting on the 710 to the 5, going to Boyle Heights or El Sereno or downtown LA, like just completely leaving where I'm from, and me going and taking my passion, my mind, my knowledge, taking it over there. And I started thinking like, you know what, this sort of sucks that I always have to extract myself from my neighbors, from my community, and leave. And like I have a lot of friends that went to college, and we always kind of had that mentality, oh, where are you gonna move after college? Like it's always like this mentality of leaving. And I started thinking like, hey, like we don't have anything here, like we need to give back. We need to like turn that definition of success around to success is not leaving and escaping Southeast LA, it is empowering Southeast LA, it is bringing community to Southeast LA. That's why we don't have a lot of small businesses, because like corporations have like extracted like everything they can from our community, and all they do is take from our working class people, but corporations never represent us or really give back to us. So it's all about just people power and giving back, and we can't give back if we keep leaving. We can't.
Very
Yeah.
true. Can you tell me a little bit more about Proyecto Vecindad?
Yeah, so Proyecto Vecindad is like, it's like, it just came out of the vientre, like it was barely born. Like last week we came out to the public, we announced ourselves, but we're a group of young like educators, artists, poets, community organizers, students, activists. We're just a young group of people that are first generation Latinos or immigrants that have been putting in work in their own ways. We have been individuals doing our own work in like galleries or open mics or movements like immigrant protests, things of that nature. But we have decided to bring our minds together and our efforts together to create like something really beautiful, which is a community center here in Southeast LA, organized by the people, for the people, where we can make educators out of our neighbors. Everybody here in this community knows how to do something, whether it's sing or play guitar or do jiu-jitsu or any of those skills. Why don't we make teachers out of them and teach our people how to fish for themselves and take like power back? Like it doesn't have to always be community college or CSU or high school education. These are alternative forms of educating ourselves. And all these models, I always gotta like give credit to Corazón del Pueblo in East LA, in Boyle Heights, EastSide Cafe. Those spaces always have inspired me to take ownership of like a space and give back to the community. So that's what Proyecto Vecindad is trying to do here in Southeast LA. Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned during the performances is that you encourage everybody to perform, but really try to aim it to where it's not poetry or a spoken word that has bigotry or racism, or you're trying to change that perception that's out of the media right now.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I feel like it's important to be into the arts and share our talents, but we need to be conscious. Like, we need to know as people that our words do affect other people, and words are so powerful. They can create stereotypes, they can create prejudice, and they can create discrimination and hatred against other people. We have so much like going on here in our Latino communities with rape culture, with sexual harassment of women, with like catcalling. I see it all the time, like guys honking at women, screaming inappropriate things. Like, all that makes like women here in this community feel unsafe. So this is a space that doesn't want to promote that. Like, we want to have like that prevention. Like, there's not a space that wants to hear that, and we don't support that. So keep that to yourself if that's how you really feel. Like, we don't want to hear it. So it's like fighting the status quo that we hear on the radio with so much like bigotry and like discrimination against certain groups of people. Like, we don't want to hear homophobia or sexism or racism or jokes about dark-skinned Latinos and like all this like hatred that happens. So it's so common and so basic. Like, we're not basic. We're trying to be conscious of our effect in this world. So that's something like that we're always constantly trying to like put in the disclaimer. Like, please don't share any of this work if that's what you want to share. And if somebody does share it, like, now we've talked about ways to deal with that, because we can't control everybody that comes to the space. A lot of times it's raza that has their own philosophies, and they don't know about like feminism and rape culture. They're just gente that come with their own ideologies. So we've already, I say we as in me and people that help me organize the space, like, talked about ways to like maybe intervene in that situation. Like, you know, if somebody thinks they need to use some violent words, like, we'll have a conversation. Hey, why do you think you need to use this word to describe this person? And, you know, really trying to like speak about it. It's important.
How has the community accepted Alivio? I mean, how has it impact as a whole? I mean, how does your neighbors feel about, you know, having people come into your garage and becoming a monthly event, because it's going this strong?
Yeah.
Did you have doubts in any time when you decided to do this that it was gonna, that people were not gonna accept it, or it was gonna be challenging, or what's the experience?
The first time we had it, there was like 100 people that showed up, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of people. I don't even have enough chairs. The next month we had it, like, there was a lot of people. Luis Rodriguez was here. It was so many people. There's been like a few months where there's only like 25 people, like less people, but it's very intimate and it's beautiful. The neighbors never call the cops on us. Like, obviously they support us because we're loud, but like the neighbors sometimes come. They would help my mom sell food. The little kids like around the neighborhood that can't stay out late, they ask me like, what do you do? What is that? So I feel like just throwing seeds into their minds, like, wow, my neighbor like does this. And like, my neighbors know I've been on LA Times, the front page of LA Times. So I feel like it's just kind of like, wow, like, you do this in your garage and you came out on this like article and this document. Like, One Day in LA was filmed here. So through this space, people have met and created other collectives. Like, Southeast LA Collective was created like last year, and we all met through this space, and we created the first ever Southeast LA Art Walk, which incorporated like 12 businesses where we had artists there. We had over 20 artists in the main space right there on Atlantic and Gage. Politicians endorsed us, and they helped us pay like for insurance for the space. They provided audio and all that. We had over like 20 vendors, like over 1,000 attendees. Like, that came out on LA Times. So like, through this space, like, it's been a trickle down effect, like a snowball effect of other beautiful things arising.
Where do you see Alivio going in the next few years?
Honestly, a lot of people have told me like, wow, Alivio's so popular, like, you can do it here, here, here. I'm like, no, I don't want to. I want to keep it here. because this is why it's special, because it's so intimate. If you come here, you get to know my mom, my dad, my dog. If you want to use the restroom, you have to walk through the kitchen, walk to my room, and it's like trust. Like, I'm trusting so many strangers to come into my house, and like I feel like people have so much respect for us, and like we have respect for them. So I think it needs to stay here for a long time because it's beautiful here and it's so intimate. It's in the garage, a space that people used to live there, like families used to live there, and like unfortunately people got kicked out because city like found out we were renting, and that's illegal. But through that we created this environment, you know. So I honestly just see Alivio as a semilla, as a space where people come and get to know each other and create outside. That's what I see Alivio as, and I see it as an inspiration for everybody else that thinks they don't have power. Like, hey, do you have a yard? Do you have a backyard? Do you have a living room? You can do something there. Like, you don't need like all this money. You don't need everything. All you need is like apoyo. All you need is like risk and passion and vulnerability. That's what you need. Yeah.
So you gain a lot of family.
Yeah, I have a lot of family. Like, yeah, I have so much family on social media now too. Like, it's pretty amazing to feel the love every month. People come over and it's beautiful. Like, people like to stay and just chat, like, and hang out and talk about what to do next. Like, and it doesn't mean you have to make an event. Like, people are doing beautiful things through documentation, just like you and the students here are documenting this. Like, this is important. This is media by la gente for la gente. Like, we need people documenting through like film and radio and all these amazing mediums. So we do have people right now outside like documenting, like regular folks. They're going to make their own documentaries, blast them on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So we're creating that culture, like, hey, si se puede, we're doing it, you can do it, you know? So it's that like progression. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us
Thank
over
you.
your casa and then you use your restroom. And I did get to walk through your kitchen and I did meet your family.
I hope you had a good time, and I hope the students had a
time.
great time too.
Thank
Awesome.
Lastly, we'd like to acknowledge individuals and collectives that really supported and were able to make this week's episode possible, including Elefante Collective and the individuals who took the time off of their busy schedule to be interviewed. We really appreciate the time and efforts that was taken, and we hope you all tune in to our next episode. Muchas gracias y hasta la próxima.